Hey guys, are Germans really rude? Or are they just misunderstood? Let's examine the second option, because I want to give the Germans the benefit of the doubt, as I hope they give me. I'm an American, I'm an expat, I'm living in Germany, and I have lived here for 15 years. I have a German wife, I have a child who's half German, half American, which puts me right in the middle of the tug of war between these two cultures. One viewed as completely superficial and out of their mind, and the other viewed as very cold and blunt and factual. But you know what? They're not too different, folks. There are far more similarities than there are differences. And to understand this, I want to share with you my theory as to why the world thinks Germans are so unfriendly. But first, let's take a look at a couple headlines. This one says, "Unfriendly Germans make expat life harder." Well, that might be true for many expats. They might go home after their day at work or school thinking, why do they keep making my life so hard? But it's not intentional, and you shouldn't take it personal. This article also goes on to say how Germany is ranked as one of the best places in the world for an expat to live. It's often in the top 10 countries around the world as having the best quality of life. Quality of life is important, but what metrics are used to measure the quality of life? Well, they're significant, folks, and very important, like healthcare, sanitation, education, crime levels, fresh air, clean water, public transportation, you name it. These things are important in terms of a quality of life. But what they leave out, which I also find very significant, is humor. Not considered something that needs to be measured when identifying the quality of life in a certain place. Okay, so that might be something that we need to explore. The other thing this article points out is that while Germany is ranked as one of the top places for an expat to live, it's also ranked very low in terms of the ease of transitioning into the new culture for an expat. It's ranked very low on its friendliness. But who's making the ranking? Who's determining how unfriendly or friendly Germans are? Well, when it comes to studies like that, it is English speakers like myself who are sharing their views and sharing their findings. It's not German on German. It's not a German saying how unfriendly Germans are. And we take a look at maybe this article here. Why people think Germans aren't funny. Well, if you saw my last video, I shared the headline that Germany officially the least funny country in the world. Yeah, folks, in 2011, a study that was published did state that Germany was the least funny country in the world. So, what do Germans think about that? They don't think anything about it because they don't know it, right? In this article, there is a contribution made by a German teacher, an English-French teacher, who says, I'd never known about that stereotype. I only found out by speaking to English-speaking people. She goes on to say that I don't think we consider ourselves humorless. And that's 100% true. When I parade the article that Germany is the least funny country in the world to my English students, they have no awareness of that. They ask the question, why? Who thinks that? Because they do consider themselves rich in humor. So, what's that all about? Well, let's dig deeper. Let's see, this next article will begin to shine a light on where my theory comes from. Germany has an arrogance problem. What is it they're speaking of? Well, I'll give you an example. If you're sitting at a dinner table with a German, perhaps you're an expat like myself, and you're here in Germany, and you sit across from someone you just met, someone that you might want to befriend from the office or from school. Maybe that person looks to you and says, "Pass the salt." You might be thinking, "Go F yourself, you arrogant piece of S." Well, don't jump to conclusions, folks. Don't take it personally. Don't get rubbed the wrong way. Because that German, by asking you, "Pass the salt," is just being themselves. And when that German is asking that question in German to another German, there's no offense because that is the cultural norm. Germans speak in a very concise way often, exchanging just facts, just the relevant information. There's not much room for small talk. There's not much room for feel-goodery, for sparkles, for moonbeams, for unicorns. Often it's to the point. So what happens if you're an English-speaking native speaking to a German and you're confronted by this blunt force, facts, only relevant information? You may start to form an opinion of your German friend or counterpart as being arrogant or rude or unfriendly, and certainly not funny. So, this stereotype, Germans being so rude, it's something held by English native speakers like myself. It's not held by Germans. So something is getting lost in translation, and I think I've identified it. Most Germans that I encounter speak a basic level of English. Many of them speak fantastic English. They can be very proud of themselves. But most Germans, albeit basic or high-level English, do not speak English in a way that necessarily incites a form of confidence or trust or friendliness with the person they're speaking to, because they have chosen a form of the English language which is very good at communicating facts and relevant information, but not very good at exchanging any sort of warm fuzziness. Okay? I can give you a few examples of that. Let's look at speaking about the past. Most Germans are going to hold tight to the past simple. For example, I cooked yesterday. I ate pizza yesterday. I worked. I slept. I brushed my teeth yesterday. In those examples, I incorporated yesterday as a time reference. In other examples, I didn't. But in every example, the time is absolutely within the statement. It's connected to it. You can't shake it off. The past simple is obsessed with the time and obsessed with whether or not things are finished or unfinished. And it's that obsession that doesn't leave much room for the sparkles. So think about it this way, folks. If you're in a classroom with Germans living in Germany, as myself, and someone turns to you and says, "Did you watch Star Wars?" If you don't know that person well, first of all, it's a bit awkward because you know as an English-speaking native that the time reference is in that statement, whether it's spoken or unspoken. So you might think to yourself, did I watch Star Wars, huh? Did I tell that person I was going to watch Star Wars? What is that person thinking of? What, last weekend? Was it on TV last night? It's confusing because of that attachment to the time, because of that obsession. What that German should have asked was, have you seen Star Wars? That statement is the present perfect and has no relevance to the time. There's a huge difference between did you see Star Wars or have you seen Star Wars? Did you see Star Wars is basically you standing with a checklist with a yes or no field waiting to fill in the blank. So, as it would go, did you see Star Wars? Yes. Okay. End of conversation. The English speaker doesn't have a clue that you want to talk about the subject of Star Wars. Because we're not talking about the experience when asked, did you see it? Now, if we take a look at the present perfect, have you seen Star Wars? The time floats away. Nobody cares about it. Nobody's thinking of when. They're thinking only of if. And they're also thinking of sharing their experience of the Star Wars film and hearing your experience of the Star Wars film. More or less, it's a great icebreaker. It's a great way to start a conversation by saying, have you seen? Have you heard? Have you tasted? Not, did you see? Did you hear? Did you taste? That sounds like a police officer. That sounds like a very authoritative figure. And that sounds like the kind of person that after a certain amount of time, you're gonna walk away from. Because who wants to stand in front of an authoritative figure for much longer than they need to? It's not warm and fuzzy, and it's not inviting of a conversation. So keep that in mind as one of those strategic ways that we can kind of build that bridge between our cultures. We have to be understood and really communicate what we're really feeling, and not just the shortcut with the facts, right? It's going to change how things are for you if you're a German, if you're trying to reach out to your new client who flew in from the United States, or if you're there to meet and greet with the people that first day in their office by saying, have you seen the Altstadt? Have you tried alt beer? Have you been to the Kermis? Not did you? Okay? Another thing that you have to understand if you really want to connect with your English-speaking natives is the ing, the ing, the king of English. Ing or ing is associated with continuous forms, like the present continuous. I am speaking, you are listening. Like the past continuous. I was sleeping, you were making too much noise. There are other ways also of using ing in the perfect forms. But let's understand ing. Anytime you use ing, when you speak it out, the listener automatically has a movie which begins to play in their mind. So, if you're German and you call me and you go, hey Joe, I'm cooking dinner, what are you doing? I see you cooking dinner. I know you're cooking dinner, and I can picture it in my mind, and a movie begins to play. Well, as an American, a movie, that's compelling. That draws me near, because Americans like to be entertained. We want to see what's happening, man. So, think about that the next time you start to talk about the future. Because I know you Germans, I've taught many of you over the years, when you speak of the future, you often use going to. And you know it. Because going to is what you learned in school. And it works. It communicates about something in the future. It provides information about something in the future. So you can absolutely say that you're going to visit Oma this weekend. Bravo! I now understand what your plans are. Because going to is always an identification of a plan made before speaking. So, when you use going to, you're telling the person that you either have this plan or you don't have this plan. And it's important to exchange plans because sometimes you need to tell someone that you have a plan, right? They say, hey, let's go fishing. And you go, oh, no, I can't. I'm going to my Oma's house. Okay, next time. It's good to exchange that information. But when it doesn't have any relevance in the conversation to exchange a plan, you want to divert to using the present continuous to talk about the future. Many of you might say, well, that doesn't make sense to use a present form to talk about the future. Well, that's one of those nuances, folks. Not everything is so black and white. Some things are a little mysterious still. So this is how it works. When you tell me about what's happening this weekend, you say, hey man, hey dude, I'm visiting Oma this weekend. I'm visiting my sweet little Oma this weekend. The movie begins playing. What is the movie? Visiting? Okay. ing? Bingo. I see you opening the door with your flowers, and I see your little Oma there standing with maybe some of the sweet honey that was procured by one of her friends that has a beekeeping hobby. Right? I get to see it, and I want to see it, because that shows that you're inviting me into your life. You're letting me see what's happening. You're sharing the interesting part of your plan or of your future with me. Instead of just saying, I love making plans, I'm going to the dentist, I'm going to Paris, I'm going to lunch. I'm glad you have a plan, but come on, folks. Life is not just about making plans. It's about the actions that we make. Actions speak louder than words, so focus in on those actions. Next time, say, I'm having lunch with friends this weekend. I'm visiting my Oma. I'm flying to Paris. There's a better way because we want to see the movie. Don't make the same movie play over and over and over and over and over again with the going to blah, 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 blah. So those are just 2 little tips and tricks, right? And I swear to you, I bet that if Germans adopted a couple of these tricks and began using them, that these rumors, these stereotypes would disappear because we would, at that point, understand that we're not so different. Now, there's a lot an expat can learn, too, to help in this scenario, but the focus of this video is the stereotype and kind of breaking it down. So I hope that makes sense to you, and I hope that if you're someone who's thinking of moving to Germany, that you have patience. Okay, it's not going to be all warm and fuzzy when you get here. You might feel a bit of a culture shock. But if you understand it, then you can work with it, and you could build friendships and relationships with others here. And that's what we're all trying to do, is get closer to one another. Because at the end of the day, we all just want to be loved. We all just want to feel that we're in the company of people who like us, who appreciate us. So, if any of you find that interesting or want to know more about the English language, or maybe even want to learn to speak English, I could potentially help you. I do have this kind of basic starter kit that I introduce to my German students. One of the first things I tell my German students is, you know what? I know you're afraid of making mistakes, and you should be, but only when you speak German. Because it's only in the German language that people are so concerned about correct pronunciation and correct usage. For us Americans from the United States, we don't have a concern about pronunciation. We don't have these grammar concerns because we live in a very, very diverse community. If we're from a big city like New York or Los Angeles or Miami, we're used to people speaking English in a very chaotic, butchered way. And we accept it, and it actually becomes part of the charm associated with that person. It becomes part of their identity if they mispronounce words. My grandparents were from Italy, and they mispronounced English their entire lives. And, as a child, my sister and I thought it was really funny and endearing. We never tried to correct it. We accepted it. But in Germany, it's true. If you're someone like myself attempting to speak German, many people are going to correct your pronunciation and your use of grammar. Just don't take it personal. They do it to themselves too. When I'm in a classroom filled with Germans, often it's very quiet except for my own voice because they're afraid of making mistakes. So this is why one of the first things I tell them is be afraid, but only when you speak German. Don't be afraid when speaking English because we would rather you speak to us with a bunch of mistakes than keep that pursed lip or those lips sealed tight because you know what? That makes us feel that you don't want to be friends with us. And you're probably dying inside to be friends with us. So just let it out. Make mistakes. It's okay. We just want to understand you. And to do that, it's quite simple. You just have to care enough to reach out and speak. And over time, like people who are born in the United States, you will learn English. Because if you open up, adopt some of those tricks, it's going to let your English counterpart, your friend, know that you care about them, that you trust them, that you invite them into your life, which will, in effect, allow for them to invite you into their life. And it will build a friendship or relationship which will be filled with communication, and over time, you're going to learn the language through that mechanism, not through a grammar book. You can study a grammar book from front to back, become a master of that book, and have zero skill in communicating. It will leave you with the ability to write your own grammar book, more or less, but you won't be able to communicate. So skip past that. If you're interested, I can teach you the basic 8, give you the groundwork, the basics, the basis, and then from there, you want to basically emulate an English-speaking lifestyle. Not all day, every day, but just like anything else, it takes hard work, dedication, and a routine if you really want change. If you want to get into shape, what does it take? It takes you either changing your diet or exercising. And when you start that, it's incredibly hard. If you haven't done any push-ups for the last 5 years and you try to do 10, you'll find that you're basically a big potato with legs and arms, and you have no ability to push through 10 push-ups. And most people give up. Most people give up in a matter of a day or a week because it's just too hard. But there are some who persevere, who get through the fire and then get the results they're after. Because anyone can do it. The same goes for English. So what I say is expose yourself every day to English. It could be for only 5 minutes, just like your workout with your push-ups. And if you do it over time, you'll get to a point where you see the benefits. But don't get frustrated in the first few months, because just like working out, you feel like a miserable piece of S. You don't feel very strong. But after a few months, you start to feel it, and then you thirst and hunger for more. The same will happen with your English. So what I say is, don't make excuses. Don't tell me you don't have time, because it's only 5 minutes a day. You can listen to a podcast. You can watch Netflix. You can read a magazine or a book. You can speak to someone for 5 minutes a day. And over time, your English will improve rapidly. And not just in a way where you can survive with it, but in a way where you can thrive with it and build the relationships and friendships that you're truly after. Because, what is a language worth if it's not to communicate with, if it's not to bring people closer together? It's very sterile if you're not using it for that purpose. And it's through that purpose, through engaging with the people around you, through that excitement interaction, which makes life worth living and makes all of what you're doing better. Whether it's what could be considered a crappy job or a difficult school semester. If you can engage with the people around you, everything gets better. So make that time, 5 minutes a day, and get exposure to topics that you like. Don't go after learning materials. Dive into the topics that you love. So if you love Harry Potter, put on Harry Potter. But what I suggest is listening in English and also putting the English subtitles on. A lot of Germans put the German subtitles on so they can translate. That doesn't make sense because those translations are often not word for word, and it can be very confusing and counterproductive. So you want English, double English. And why that is useful is because while you're watching and listening, you're also reading. So you're getting this exposure on different fronts. And that handy-dandy remote control allows you to pause at any point and write down that word that may be new into an ever-growing vocabulary book. And those vocabulary words will be attached to topics that you're interested in, which will allow for you to engage in small talk on things that matter to you. That's the way to go, folks. That's what I suggest to you. Build it up. Dedicate yourself. I'm trying my best. I hope you try your best. And if you find that there's any use for this information, share it with a friend. And if you want to know more, leave a comment below, and maybe I'll make a series of videos detailing the Basic 8 and get you up to speed so you can have the English conversations that you so desperately want and need. So, folks, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was informational, maybe educational. And big ups to the sunshine. Much love to you. I'll see you next time. Ciao for now.